Hey guys, how's it going? This is Josh back again with another movie review, and today I'm going to talk about the new Guardians of the Galaxy movie. Now, I'm just going to get this started immediately by saying this is the best MCU movie since Phase 3. No ifs, ands, or buts, period. This is the best MCU movie since Phase 3. It might be a top 5 MCU movie to me. I'm not kidding. Everyone in the cast kills it this go around. The chemistry between the Guardians actors at this point, it's at its peak in this one. They knocked it out of the park, and everyone should honestly be proud of their performance and involvement in this film. The cinematography and special effects in this series, and to be honest, the entire MCU is at its peak in this movie. I'm not even kidding. There are some of the best looking shots, animation, costume design, and special effects that I've seen in a while. It's honestly super refreshing considering the past few MCU movies and TV shows that we've gotten. The art design as well. Some of the characters and creatures in this movie are so interesting and so compelling and just downright disgusting to look at. I'm going to be completely honest with you. This movie is super violent. It is. This movie is super violent. This movie is super gory. Well, for a Marvel movie, I'll say it's super gory. And has a bunch of terrifying body horror. And somehow, it still feels like a nice, compact family movie at the end of it. Like, I'm honestly surprised Marvel let a lot of these things slide. Maybe it's because it's James Gunn's final hurrah. And they're just like, hey, you have the keys. Do whatever you want with this, especially considering the state of the MCU now. It felt like they gave James Gunn almost total creative control, not just over the script, but how everything looks and feels. The pacing for this film is perfect. It's 2 hours and I think like 20 or 30 minutes long, and I didn't even realize it. I never felt bored. Emotionally, I have to admit that this film is super heavy. Much heavier than probably anyone expected, including myself. Like, this might be the heaviest movie in the MCU since, like, the end of Phase 3 outside of Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I don't know how to say this since Phase 4 was so bad, but in all the best ways possible. The good bits and pieces of Phase 4, like the nostalgia from Spider-Man, the emotion from Black Panther Wakanda Forever, the action from Shang-Chi, and all of the great things that were in the previous Guardians movies are like combined into this movie with better special effects and better cinematography. I believe this is amongst some of the darkest MCU films, and I think I could stand on that with some legitimate arguments. Like, no kidding, it might be the darkest. This film deals with Star-Lord's grief over losing Gamora and potentially Rocket. Star-Lord's grief and panic over potentially losing two of his closest, obviously Gamora, his love interest, and Rocket, his best friend, that he says a bunch of times in this movie, which Batista has a couple funny jokes that we'll get into a little bit later. Chris Pratt, you excelled at this Star-Lord role in this film. You killed it. The emotional scenes, you might have seen a bit of them in the trailer. It hits even harder in the movie. Shout out to Chris Pratt. That's all I can really say.
She doesn't remember it because it wasn't her. Because her dad threw her off a magic cliff and she died, and then I lost my temper and nearly destroyed half the universe. Some dumbass Earth dude who met a girl, fell in love. That girl died. And then came back a total dick.
And to be honest with you, shout out to Bradley Cooper. Who would have thought that the series that everyone called off from the beginning as, oh, it's stupid, I'm not watching a movie with a talking tree and a talking raccoon, ends up having the most heart based off of the talking tree and talking raccoon characters. But I must say, I don't think this is something that could work in any other Marvel movie or any other superhero movie, period. James Gunn has had this perfect balance of emotion, action, drama, and comedy that I don't think any other director has really figured out. The closest director who's figured that perfect mix out, in the MCU at least, was Taika Waititi with Thor Ragnarok. But then we seen Thor Love and Thunder, and we all know how that turned out.
So if you die, you'll end up in Valhalla.
Oh, Michael, go away.
Like, honestly, I was slapping my knee and my forehead from the constant ignorant but innocuous humor from Batista's performance as Drax. And also, I really appreciated the humor and the character development between the characters of Mantis and Nebula. I thought they did a really good job displaying how much these two characters in particular have grown, especially since they were just recently added to the group. They felt like they've been there from the beginning, and honestly, I forgot that they weren't.
You left out some important information, but that is the gist of it.
I also thought that Adam Warlock's character, despite being terrifyingly powerful, also had me cracking up every time he was on screen, and his humor never felt like it undermined how strong he was.
Where did you go, Squirrel?
Where I feel like that happened with, other characters that we've seen in the MCU, this character was still just as terrifying as he was funny, and both of those things were super high on the scale. And finally, I have to give all the credit in the world to Chukwuji Iwuji. I just learned how to pronounce his name. I feel like it's still wrong, but man, you want to talk about the cruelest villain we probably have in the MCU. Incredibly evil, incredibly slimy, incredibly irredeemable.
Earth. It inspired me to create Counter-Earth.
I don't care.
All of the good and none of the bad.
I don't need another speech by some impotent whack job whose mother didn't love him, rationalizing why he needs to conquer the universe.
I'm not trying to conquer the universe. I'm perfecting it.
He also has the coldest line of any MCU villain outside of Thanos, by the way. And I thought the relationship that they displayed with High Evolutionary and Rocket was just amazing. It gives so much context to the Rocket character, and you understand why he's so callous and pushes everybody away. It makes the speech that Yondu gave him at the end of Guardians 2, or in the middle, I should say, that much more potent, impactful. There's a line in this movie in which someone tells Rocket it was your story all along. Considering those lines like that were sprinkled about Rocket were amongst some of my minor critiques about those previous two movies, it makes those moments in which people speak to him, or he even speaks about himself in a humorous way, that much more tragic. Now, if there's any critique, the soundtrack in this movie isn't bad. In fact, I love the soundtrack. I just feel like the soundtrack doesn't blend as well as the first two movies, especially the first two, whereas in those movies there was much more of a narrative presence for the songs, whereas here it feels like the songs were used as a score to scenes, or background music for certain scenes, not necessarily to deliver to the audience exactly what Star-Lord might be feeling about this situation or what have you. But yeah, I love this movie. I could confidently say this is like a top 5 Marvel movie to me. And this also makes the Guardians of the Galaxy the best trilogy in the MCU. It has surpassed Captain America's, in my opinion. This might be the closest thing to a 10 I've seen in the MCU outside of Infinity War. That's how much I enjoyed this movie. Now, let me know what you think. What are your thoughts? Did you like this movie? Did you hate it? Did you love it? What would you rate it? Let me know. Like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I will see y'all in the next review.